welcome to the 225 slot. It may be me. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Markley. I teach in the honors program. Well, my mentee just got finished. So we're going to move on to James Luke Markley, if I didn't say that correctly, whose presentation, Deserts and Just Desserts, Cinematic Desert Landscapes is Dynamic Character Bridging Audiences and Environments Through Filmic Escape. So we'll give a round of applause.
Welcome to your desert journey. Imagine nothing but sand across the expansive horizon. No plants, no animals, no people. How is this something that's valid? How is this something that relates to us if there's nothing there? How can we gain and glean a specific insight from this? Good afternoon, my name is Luke Markley, and I'll be presenting Deserts and Just Desserts, the character of landscape. Oftentimes, these fantastical depictions of landscapes permeate throughout film. You might recognize a few examples on the screen. But there's something beyond that landscape as just a visual appeal. There's something connecting, whether that's culturally, whether that's socially, a sacredness, religious aspect. There are many important aspects for which deserts can be amazing also, but at the same time, captivating. But first, what is a desert? Well, in a general sense, a desert is a place where there's no people. Frankly, a desert can be said as deserted. But it's beyond this depiction of a desert in visual context and going beyond, what does this arid landscape portray? How does it connect audiences watching a movie like Lawrence of Arabia or Sahara? And what important aspect can we glean from that? My research has gone through a filmography from films like Lawrence of Arabia, Sahara, March or Die, Beau Geste, and even the modern one, which came out a few years ago. But more importantly, directors within these films utilize the landscape as a dynamic character that brings audiences together and it forms a unique and social appeal and connection with the landscape. As something to be valued, as something to be perceived and aware that nature and landscapes have importance in the context. Scott McDonald first uses the term eco-cinema in the 2004 book, but essentially bridging that environment and film aspect is probably problematic in certain ways. Moreover, this connection between film and environment is not something to instill an environmental attitude or a specific paradigm of time. Rather, it's uniquely suited for the audience to bring about their own perception, to bring about their own connection to this environment. Eco-cinema is not just films about saving the earth or preventing other disasters from happening, but also connecting and realizing that as inhabitants of this cultural and global landscape, we have an important part within this context. Moving forward, the landscapes themselves present unique characters and offer an interesting value within the context of cinema. Some historical perspectives classify desert as barren, as desolate, as something that needs to be overcome, as something that's in conflict with the interests of people. But rather, in the depictions of deserts within these films, we see desert as friendly, as something that has an aspect that we can relate to as an audience. This phenomenological aspect of film, which incorporates the experience, whether that's on the screen or whether that's in an actual landscape within a desert environment. The depictions of these fantastic and opulent landforms yield a unique meaning as their roles within the films. In 1926, The Son of the Sheep came out as one of the end of the silent film eras. We see Rudolph Valentino, the son of Sheep, and also his love interest, as he's kidnapped by bandits and a caravan led by her father. But more importantly, it is within this textural, almost realistic aspects of it whether that's the physical characterizations within the landscape or the emotional appeal in the relationship that we experience within this particular scene. We can see the rocks, we can see the sand, we can feel the captive and relationship between these two characters, almost as if we were falling in love with the landscape. Prominent film scholar Winifred Gallagher describes this relationship as psychological ecology, where the power of place is more than just an atmosphere or a surrounding, but it impacts our decisions, it impacts the way we relate to others, and more importantly, it creates an amazing and fantastical journey. Moving next on our expedition, we see the Wild West in John Ford's iconic 1939 film Stagecoach. We follow a colorful cast of characters as they move their way towards their eventual destination in Mexico. But rather, it's the Monument Valley, a depiction of this amazing landfill on the northern Arizona-Utah border, that uniquely describes what it means to be a landscape and what its role in film is. From the sandstone views in the background, to the vegetation, to the journey that these characters must go through. Specifically, this landscape offers a parallel. This coach is not just a coach. The valley isn't just a valley, but rather it symbolizes the journey in which we must go through, as well as these characters, to lead to a greater appreciation and recognition of this landscape, of this natural wonder, as valuable, whether that's in certain contexts of cultural or personal, but nonetheless important. In this next clip, you will see the opulent and magnificent sunrise over an Arabian desert. Lawrence of Arabia, released in 1962, is one of the pivotal films in which we can experience this musical, almost melodious aspect of the landscape. Much like a character within a film, this environment speaks to us. It has a dialogue. With certain characters, it's almost as if we're having a conversation. Moreover, this impactful and wonderful film utilizes the context and the subtleness of silence. The amusement park aspect of mindset. But it's these long shots, these fantastic depictions of this natural landscape, which incorporates some of the aspects that I mentioned earlier. But exactly what does it lead us to? What are the commonalities between these landscapes that create this unique and visceral character? Going forward on our desert journey, we see the 1939 film Beau Geste, where three brothers join the French Foreign Legion as they go into a treacherous fort led by a harsh commander. Particularly within this shot, we see the contours and the curves, almost as if they are physical characteristics and anthropogenic interpretations and personifying what it means to be human. These landscapes themselves not only provide the emotional connection, the musical and the auditory, and the visual beauty and the magnificence, but also within the context of this scene, we see many important conflicts, whether that's the battles or the interpersonal disputes. All these important aspects portray one magnificent depiction of a journey, almost as if it's a journey through life, through character itself. Moving forward into modern cinema, the 2006 film Hidalgo, which follows Frank Coppola across a treacherously long distance horse race, challenged by an affluent sheep. We see this excitement, this emotional captivation, almost as if getting nervous for a presentation, or if it's your test that you're studying. But it's in this, a non-material element, that we see this landscape as not only a journey, but also as a destination, as the final lap of Monsoon. That's how you ride a horse. Going off this amazing aspect, from the American West to the sands of the Saharan Desert, or whether it is in Yuma, Arizona, or Monument Valley, Utah, all these landscapes portray this unique ability for directors to connect with audiences, whether that's sitting down and escaping through a film, or visiting these landscapes themselves. They both offer a unique message and point. Going beyond the character and the role of the landscape themselves. This unique ability for directors to mold the cinematic and the phenomenological aspects of the film presents a quite powerful depiction of the social, of the biotic, of the cultural, of the religious, and the important aspects and significance of these deserts. More often than not, we see them characterized as barbaric, as harsh. But through many examples within film, we come to discover, we come to a greater understanding of these deserts, not only as characters, but important influencers within the story themselves. Part of my motivation for this project was my childhood. I grew up in Tucson, Arizona, across the Sonoran Desert. When I walked outside my backyard, I could see saguaro cacti, desert flowers, jumping cholla, roadrunners, even javelinas nestled right across from my house, trying to get the cool drafts, the AC. But all these images and all these experiences permeated throughout my experience, and come to a greater conclusion that even though some of these films might be just a set in a Hollywood lot, or whether on set in the Moroccan desert, we see them not only as experiences and as entertainment, or perhaps uncharacteristically fascinating, but also as pulling in, as drawing within the experience, and the philosophical and deeper implications that we arrive at. Moreover, this is not just something that's an environmentally centered world, or an environmentally centered message from the directors. Rather, like a perspective of the landscape, or a preconception or viewpoint itself. It's very unique, it's very subjective, and offers an important and critical component to how we relate to the natural environment around us and our place within it. John Ford's Monument Valley is a specific example of this, but many of these landscapes offer a unique characterization and almost are the protagonists and lead roles of the story. Whether that's starring in the fantastic westerns or going across sands in a foreign land, each unique instance and impact of this yield an important and critical conclusion. I'd like to say thank you to my advisors, Dr. John Carter and Dr. Tyler Undergon, for their continued support and help through this process. And it's been an amazing journey with you, the audience, who have come to see this. Oh, and one more thing. As for the just desserts, I can't offer you any justice or retribution, but I'm sure you'll find the treats outside. Thank you.
You see a connection between the desert landscape and other types of sort of arid landscapes, like polar scapes and seascapes, and in science science fiction, you've got Mars and the lunar surface, which are right here. Do you think those kind of plug into the same kinds of things that you get in the desert? Is that unique?
Oh, absolutely. And going off the polar aspect, when you think of Antarctica, do you think of a desert? It's actually classified as a polar desert, which is something that's might not be widely known, but also that kind of science fiction and the water elements as well. They bring an important aspect to the story and can provide an equally unique perspective.
Do you think that the idea of the desert and its relationship to storytelling is a uniquely American phenomenon because of America's experience in the West and moving through deserts? Like, do you think it would be the same like German film, or would it be something like a polar desert? Or do you think that's like a uniquely American relationship?
I think the American myth of the Western is something that really is significant and very unique to the kind of cultural and cinematic world that we live in today. But also a lot of the filmmaking techniques, not only in American cinema, but internationally as well. The Arabian deserts and some of the deserts in China or Australia, they offer also this kind of telling. I would say for us, the Western is kind of something that we latch on to. It's something that's partly our culture.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too, how the American desert seems different than the others. Because of the connection between deserts and property. And when we look at the Sahara Desert, our first thought is, who does this belong to? But when we see a Western, that's usually precisely the issue. Like, who does this land belong to? And I don't know, did you think about that connection between property and deserts?
Absolutely. I think in the context of the American landscape, we see this westward movement and expansion, especially during the cowboy era. But also, when you mentioned the point of the Sahara, it's all out of the conflicts that arise from them. It's just fighting over who owns this or who deserves to be here. It's a very interesting point, but I think it's equally important.
When I look at the films that you reviewed or that you investigated, I see a lot of crossings and a lot of kind of racial others. And when I think about some of the American environmental writers that I really like Edward Abbey or Mary Austin, I think of sort of delving into place, sort of more like part of the environment. And I thought of it when I saw your picture of Arizona that was really a highly populated desert. And I was wondering if you found any films that aligned with that perspective of some of those environmental writers that were kind of more a delving in as opposed to sort of a crossing and avoiding and racing perspective.
Yeah, especially like within Stagecoach, we see, it was outside of my project's scope to look at kind of the othering and the cultural relationships between where is this desert landscape, but what are the inhabitants, the indigenous peoples. But you see a lot with the Apache Indians within the West, or the Bedouin tribes within, the Moroccan landscape or the Sahara. It's kind of this constant, struggle or kind of friction between the two. But I think, as well as Lawrence of Arabia and Stagecoach, they do an excellent job of kind of really hitting that point of what does it mean with the other and this desert as an example.
I think we're gonna, one more question, then we're gonna get the mentors up here.
Does the texture of the sand change the ability to travel in the desert?
Absolutely. Especially in the dunes in the Sahara. You can see it in one of my films, Sahara, which is Humphrey Bogart, classic film. You see him going through across the sands in a tank. Realistically, that's not possible. But that's kind of the ingenuity and fantastical aspect of the film. But absolutely, some of the treks and kind of journeys, a lot of the animals are only suited for animals that are acclimated to that climate. It is often perilous, but nonetheless an important period.
I just want to say, when you're asking Luke questions, I started getting worried that his project is going to go those directions. Because that's the one thing I really admire about Luke is his curiosity. And almost anything you say, he'll be like, jump on it. Like even from yesterday to today, how your project evolved. So I just want to applaud you for that.
I really like that, if I had
had to pick one topic that movement obviously moved to, it's film. Mr. Film here, university's working on it at a time that I've seen in a couple of years. And so I think that this is going to be part of your lifetime career.
One more